Welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris, and I am joined today with Bethany Bingham from the Hogle Zoo in Salt Lake City. Hello, Bethany.
Hi, how are you, Chris?
Doing awesome. Oh, thank you so much for doing this. Bethany is the president of the American Association of Zookeepers, and our friend Jim Winepress told me I had to interview Bethany, and I absolutely agree because I think this one's going to be great because it's coming at you at a different angle. More about the people that take care of animals and their mission and things like that. So it's going to be a really great conversation. So I'm really excited. Thank you, Bethany, again.
Absolutely.
So, I know you're working at the Hogle Zoo now, but if you can just kind of give us, I always like to ask a brief background, where you grew up, obviously you're currently living somewhere in Utah, right? So, and then what got you, what got you involved in taking care of animals?
Well, I'm an Air Force brat, so that'll tell you that I moved around a little bit when I was younger. But I spent a lot of time, I went to high school and middle school in Western New York, and then I went to college in Michigan, which is where my family is originally from. And then when I graduated from Michigan State, go Spartans, I have to get that in whenever I can.
You and Angie. Angie too. She's a Michigan State alum. She always go green.
Oh, yay, go green. I love that. Okay. And then I took a job. The first job that was available at a zoo was in Salt Lake City. So that was a super brief synopsis. Basically, growing up, so like I said, my family's from Michigan. My mom she grew up in the Detroit area. And so you could never, she always wanted pets, but, obviously you couldn't have large animals in that situation. So when my dad was stationed at a base out in California, my mom got her first horse, which is what she had always wanted. And when she got her first horse, I also got my first pony, a rather large pony. But she sort of, fostered that animal instinct. We had animals in the house. We had dogs and cats in the house, which was fantastic. And so you learn a sense of responsibility with that growing up. But then the horses were a big deal for both of us. And when she saw that it was going to become a passion of mine, it sort of turned into me and the horses. And then when we moved to Western New York, I started showing competitively. I also was in 4-H, which is a great program. I dabbled a little bit in dairy goats and some of the other farm animals at that point. Again, we didn't have a farm ourselves. My horse was boarded at a facility away from our house. But that was kind of how it started. And then my mom's dad, so my grandfather on my mom's side, he was always involved with zoos. He was actually on the board of director for the Detroit Zoo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so he and my mom had worked at the Detroit Zoo growing up as well. So zoos kind of always had a sort of a thread in my life. And that is probably, I think, the link to where it started. I have a handful of people, probably 5 or 6 people that have been pretty significant influence in my career, if you will, my zoo career and my animal passion. And that's probably one of them. So that's where it got started. And there's more background there. But what I did, I have a degree in animal science from Michigan State, a bachelor's. And of course, after I graduated from Michigan State, they came up with a zoo and aquarium science program, don't you know? So I missed out on that, but that's okay, because farm animal made sense with all my horses background. And then, so I basically got some really good advice from someone, which is another unique zoo story. If you want me to share, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We got plenty of time.
Okay, so I'll back up a little bit. So my grandfather introduced me to the director of the Detroit Zoo at the time, and we had a conversation, and he sort of really just ignited my passion for pursuing a zoo career when I was roughly a sophomore at Michigan State. And he encouraged me to become a member not only of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is sort of the regulatory body for accredited zoo facilities across the country, but he also encouraged me to join the American Association of Zookeepers. So roughly end of my junior year in college, I became a member of both of those associations, which I thought was a very professional thing to do, even though it was early on, because I didn't have a job yet. And I also thought that it was a great networking opportunity. So I would say that that was one of the other kind of significant moments in jumpstarting my career in zoos. And that basically gave me a directory to the accredited facilities across the country, which really helped me when I was sort of planning out where I was going to go. And because I grew up, moving around a lot, I wasn't afraid to travel and I wasn't afraid to go out and leave, the Michigan area. Um, so I applied basically to every facility across the country.
Yeah.
That was quite an experiment. And then Hogle Zoo in Salt Lake City was the first one that offered me a job. So I didn't figure I was going to stay out here very long. I thought I'd be here a year or so and then I'd move back towards the Michigan area. And clearly that didn't happen because I've been out here for 21 years. So,
But you're stuck. You're stuck.
so there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I know this is jumping ahead a little bit and I'm sorry, but I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you talking about your career. I understand the mission of zoos in the United States and zoos in Europe and all the great conservation stuff they're doing around the world. And I'm living in Southern California now. Friends I'm making, they're telling me, I give them my background and some of them are a little liberal and they're like, oh, zoos are horrible. And I really diligently try to explain what zoos are doing for conservation today. How zoos are educating the public today. This is accredited zoos. These are the big ones, the San Diego's, the Hogle Zoo, the Detroit Zoo, on and on and on. Can you just really quickly just kind of talk about the mission of, what zoos are doing for these animals?
Yeah, so the conservation aspect for facilities across the country, I think we all have the same mission, if you will, for that. Everybody has a slightly different spin on it in terms of their mission statement, right? And, a small zoo versus a medium zoo versus a large zoo, they're going to have different ways that they can participate in that, whether it's, local or whether it's, out in the field. I think that conservation of wild animals is important. This is my opinion, because, they're part of our ecosystem. They're part of living on this planet. And it all kind of, for me, it all kind of comes together. So they're important for the landscape. They're important for communities over, say in Africa as an example. They're just an important part of life. And zoos play a role in that in many different ways. So one of the things that I was brought up with is a zoo is important because you may live in a city. So this goes all the way back to my mom growing up, right, in Detroit area. You may not see, for example, a cow. So there's one great example of how some zoos still have that sort of farm type area or that local agricultural area in the zoo that allows people to see something as simple as a cow or a goat or a llama so that they can come and maybe see them up close instead of on TV or, if they don't have a TV, maybe that's their first chance to see it. So going all the way back that far, I think that they're important for that. I think they're important for endangered species so that people have an opportunity. One, it gets people outside. There's the recreation aspect. Two, it gets them outside. I mean, there is obviously some sort of entertainment aspect. I don't always love using that word. It's more of an education aspect, what I would say. So, you're getting that real life connection instead of watching it on TV. So you're outdoors, you're walking around, you get all the good feels from doing that, and then you're seeing the animal up close, and you're looking at the signage, and you're watching the animal care professionals do their thing, and they're able to talk to you through keeper talks, and they're able to give you that conservation message. So that's an important role for zoos. Zoos also play an important role, I think, for being able to help preserve species. So if a zoo has enough room at their facility to hold a bachelor group of a particular species or to work as part of SSP on a breeding program for particular species, that's really important work as well.
It is, and I'm not paid by a zoo, even though San Diego Zoo, I'm open to work there. But, Angie and I, it's one of the things we've done this past year is really try to educate people on what zoos are doing, and aquariums are doing, because they do so much for conservation. And this is me coming from a research standpoint in academia. So I take a global view and I just look at what Angie did for her PhD project. We were looking at phytoestrogens in southern white rhinoceros diets and the effects on reproduction. And just taking a view at that species, and I look at what zoos are doing, conservation centers are doing, and you can apply this to aquariums too, for their species. These species won't survive without zoos. I mean, without the research, without the money that you need. So when you said entertainment, I try to explain to people, zoos need to pay the bills. They just can't, do this for free. And people are like, oh, put them out in a sanctuary. Who's going to pay for that? Right? These animals will go extinct if we don't do this work. So a very good answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good answer.
Well, and you just, one comment that I'd like to make is I appreciate that you're adding into our conversation that it's not just zoos, it's also aquariums.
Mm-hmm.
I think aquariums are very much an important part of this, and they are a very important part of the animal care professional and what AAZk does. We include all people in animal care. But you also just touched a little piece of my heart and my passion for being in this profession, because rhinos are they're the thing that I'm passionate about, all 5 species. And that is my life mission, is to, do what I can for those animals. And that's just me personally. That's my thing.
Well, yeah, we just had, we interviewed Dr. Barry Long, and he's like a Jane Goodall type in Asia. It's amazing. In the email that he's sending me and Angie back and forth, the species he's working with, he was just in the Philippines and Vietnam. So you said rhinos, and it just made me think of Sumatran rhinos. So they just captured one, right, to bring them into this facility where they can breed them. And there's 50 left? 55, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty dire.
Yeah.
Sumatran rhinos have dramatically, their population has dramatically declined in the last handful of years.
Right. And they're on their way towards extinction. I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for Cincinnati Zoo and their breeding program with the Sumatran rhinos, this species, chances are won't survive. So again, just highlighting what certain zoos are doing for certain species.
Absolutely. Cincinnati certainly was one of the key players in sort of jumpstarting that reproductive program and learning about what it would take to sustain a pregnancy in a Sumatran rhino and what it takes to sustain them just diet wise. So they've definitely done a lot for that, and then they have obviously taken that back to the programs in Indonesia. And I've been to Indonesia. I've been to the sanctuary where I believe that rhino is going. I've seen some of the things that they're doing over there, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
And it's very important.
Yeah, it is. It's critical, or they're gone. They're gone if we don't do this work.
Exactly.
So I guess, just in that same spirit, what species are you working with right now at Hogle Zoo, that for conservation?
That's an interesting question. So, full transparency, I've been at Hogle Zoo for 21 years. I spent my first 10 years I started as a relief keeper, and I worked with our ambassador animal collection and our hoofstock collection. And then I became a primary keeper in our hoofstock collection. So I worked with everything. I worked with hippos. Actually, I did a little bit of, I worked with the penguins. I did giraffes, bison, Bactrian camels, grubby zebra, a handful of antelope, bighorn sheep species, fallow deer, lots of different hoofed animals. That sort of made sense, right, with my my sort of equine upbringing. Zebras have always been one of the animals that I have been interested in as well, and the grubby zebra was very exciting to be able to work with them. So that was my first 10 years at Hogle Zoo, and then I moved over to the veterinary side, and I became a zoo veterinary technician, so I got to take care of our entire animal collection, which was really pretty amazing to take that sort of sidestep and learn a little bit more about animals that I didn't know as much about. And then most recently, I am part of our development department. So I'm currently the development coordinator. So that is a job move that I just did this year. And I am basically my goal is to take my 20 years of animal experience and my sort of my leadership and my experience through AAZk and um, help put that into tours for VIP and donors, and help put that into our fundraising efforts for conservation at Hogle Zoo. And I'm hoping that I have that personal connection and that history at the zoo, both from the medical side as well as the animal keeping side, and also my experience in travel to see some of these animals in Africa and Indonesia. Sort of blend that all together and offer that as a really unique experience for some of our donors.
I was here listening. I'm like, am I interviewing Angie? Because Michigan, Grevy zebra, horses. It must be something about Michigan. You guys just love. It's like you guys have the same, and rhinos, same exact interests.
I'll take that.
Yeah,
I'll take that. That's a Michigan connection.
This would have been a 4-hour.
It's a Spartan connection.
It must be. This would have been a 4-hour interview if I let her interview you. You guys would have.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it sounds like we could talk about rhinos and horses for days.
Yes. She's gonna be jealous. So, yeah, I really want to, touch upon it, and that's really why we brought you on too. Is kind of talk about the American Association of Zookeepers, or AAZk. Mm-hmm. So you're the president, but can you just first kind of talk about the mission of AAZk?
Absolutely. So, the American Association of Zookeepers, the reason that this association exists is we really want to be able to offer advancement in the animal keeping profession. We want to provide, sort of that communication or networking opportunity and training for people in the animal keeping profession to further develop themselves, and also at the same time to promote conservation and help preserve the life of, animals in the wild. So it's a lot about professional development. It's a lot about networking. It's a lot about that, keeping that great, excellent communication open across the animal care field in zoos and aquariums.
And you're the president, right? So can you just kind of describe what you have to do? I'm sure that's just a lot of work.
Well, it is a lot of work, but it's work that I'm happy to participate in. Everyone, well, let me say, AAZk has very few paid employees. We do have a CEO, and we have someone that helps produce our monthly magazine, the Animal Keepers Forum. We have someone that helps design that magazine. And then everyone else, so that's on the board of directors and that's on our part of our committees and programs, they are all volunteers. So anytime that we put into creating this network of resources and really awesome communication practices and planning our annual national conference and things like that, it's all volunteer hours. So whether someone's putting 2 hours a week or 20 hours a week into it, it's what we're passionate about. And that's what we kind of just like to do. So, so I joined AAZk obviously back when I was in college as a national association, so that I could receive the Animal Keepers Forum, which is our monthly magazine, and so that I could open that network for myself going forward in my profession. When I started my job at Hogle Zoo, I joined our local chapter, which is the Utah chapter of AAZk, and I've been a member of that for 20 plus years. And within that, I have held various officer positions to keep the chapter functioning. And I've also participated in our Bowling for Rhinos program for many years. And I was sort of the fundraising chair for that. And we can come back and talk about Bowling for Rhinos again in a second. But that kind of gave me, I started attending, I had the opportunity, thanks to Hogle Zoo, to attend the AAZk National Conference back in 1998. So I started at the zoo in 97, and I was lucky that next year, so basically within a year, to be able to attend the AAZk National Conference. It was held in Indianapolis in 1998, and that just sort of really blew the doors open for me. I met so many amazing people. It just ignited my passion. And actually, that's what the conference does for a lot of people. So being able to meet those people at that time, I think that sort of led me to where I'm at right now. So, years later, obviously, I joined the AAZk Communication Committee. I was asked to come on board, and ultimately, I became the chair of that committee. It was sort of a newer committee. And then I've also been involved with our Professional Development Committee. And then I was nominated for the board of directors. I'm currently in my, I guess I'm in my final year. That's kind of crazy to say. So a term on the board of directors is 4 years. I actually started 6 months early as an interim board member to fill an empty position, and then I was nominated at that same time and voted in by the membership, along with several other open positions on the board that year. And then I've served during my term on the board. I've served as the vice president, and then I was sworn in as the president last year in Washington, D.C., which was really cool to be sworn in as the president in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And,
were you at the
and it was the golden
Were you at the
anniversary.
Capitol building when you did that? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
No, but wouldn't that have been
That
cool?
would have been awesome.
It was also the 50th anniversary for AAZk, so it was a great year. 2017 being in our national conference was really special for me. And then my role as president is, I'm here to represent the association. I am here to communicate to the membership and hopefully foster great communication within our committees and programs and with the board of directors and with the membership, so that they know about all their resources and they have the opportunity to, grow as professionals. So I'm also, as president, I'm also currently the conference manager. So I'm working with all of our national conference hosts for the next 4 to 5 years. And the conference is a big part. It's one of our main resources. So if you're a member of AAZk, a conference is a main resource. The Animal Keepers Forum magazine, which is our monthly publication, also a great resource. And of course, the AAZk website. And I really think the conference, going back to my first experience, I think that that's a really important part of the association, and having people have that opportunity to join us once a year and just come together and get recharged. That's what it boils down to. Yeah, there's tons of learning and tons of professional development opportunities, but it's about getting recharged. And it's been that way every single time that I've attended it. And yeah, that's one of the things that I love about AAZk. So as president, I'm here for the membership. I'm here to represent. I'm here to communicate and help them become better professionals and help the board of directors make decisions that's going to drive the association forward as, everything is progressive.
Right. And I think it's important too to, for the listeners to understand that you do a lot of sharing, right? You said education. And I know at these conferences, a lot of research is shared between zookeepers, how to better take care of these animals. And like you said, professional development. So it's very, very important that, zookeepers learn new ways to take better care of these animals, right?
Absolutely. The conference allows, we have topics from, conservation, boots on the ground at your local facility, to conservation in the field. We talk about husbandry training. We talk about animal behavior. We talk about nutrition. So we offer every year at the conference, we offer 3 professional certificate courses. And those, so for example, coming up in Indianapolis at our conference this next August in 2019, we are offering 3 professional certificate courses. One is going to be in advanced marine mammal husbandry. One will be in advanced elephant husbandry. And then we are going to do one in keeper safety. So that's just, we've done them in animal welfare before. We've done them on reptiles. So that gives them a little bit more, it gives them a 12 hours of dedicated focus on that topic if they choose to sign up for that. And then we have paper sessions, posters, and topical workshops. And the workshops give them a little bit more hands-on. They can break out into groups. Sometimes there's a panel of people that teach the workshops. So there's a whole variety of learning possibilities at a conference, in addition to the great networking and recharging, essentially, that gets done.
So a big question. How do we tell people that are a little bit like, they go to the zoo and they see the animals and they're like, oh, they look so bored, or they just don't understand animal behavior and animal care? This is the big question, I guess, for the whole interview. And it's a tough one. And it's one that I struggle with trying to explain to people, that don't understand animal behavior and animal care. How do we explain to people that the animals are well taken care of? They are spoiled in essence, and you work hard every day to make sure that they're. And then what we call enrichment. Can you just kind of explain the purpose of that?
Sure. I like to refer to it as behavioral enrichment. And it means probably, of course, I'm not an expert in this field, so it probably means a slightly different thing at each facility. But what we want to do at the zoo is we want to offer the animals in our care the opportunity to act natural. So we want to provide them with a natural habitat as much as we can, especially when we're building new exhibits or upgrading a current exhibit. So you want to take into consideration what their surroundings might look like in the wild and sort of provide how it might look, how it might smell, how it might feel in terms of substrate. So that's the basic idea, is providing them the most naturalistic habitat that we can in a zoo setting. And then as animal care professionals, when we're doing daily husbandry with the animals, we want to make sure, that we're watching their behavior. We're observant. That's a key part of being an animal keeper, in my opinion, whether you're working in a zoo or aquarium. I think that common sense and natural observation ability is very important. Making sure that, are you noticing what's their normal, right? Because they do live in a zoo, and what might be a behavior that you might see in the wild. And that's pretty exciting as well. So observation is a big one. Interacting with them through operant conditioning training, which is a positive reinforcement platform, where the animal, and this kind of training is very important for medical procedures. So I'll take at our zoo, for example, we have an excellent behavioral enrichment program and an excellent operant conditioning training program. And our keepers are able to do many have the animals participate in many different behaviors, so that our veterinary staff can get a good look at them without having to do a chemical immobilization on them. So they are trained to open their mouth so we can look at their teeth and their oral health. They're trained to present a leg or a paw or a hoof for, checking their nails and making sure that the bottom of their feet are healthy. They're trained for injections, which means if they want to present a hip or a shoulder, they can receive routine vaccinations. They can receive medication if they need it without us having to add stress by anesthetizing them. They can also, in some cases, the keepers can train the animals for blood draw. So, for example, an elephant would present its ear through a training program, through a training door. There's always a protective barrier between an animal keeper and an elephant. They would be trained to present that ear and to accept a blood draw there. And then the medical staff, like say at our facility, doesn't even have to participate in that. We can just be present to take the blood sample and then go do the lab work part of that. So that is another kind of way that we are enriching their life, because through training, we're able to keep them healthy without having to, interact with them very often in that way with a medical mobilization. Also, enrichment means providing them with things that stimulate their natural senses and their five senses. So, a visitor might see a ball in the exhibit, like, whether it's an orange ball or a tan colored ball that matches the color of the exhibit. They might look at that and go, why is that ball in there? Well, the keepers have the opportunity to interact with the public and explain to them that ball might stimulate, if that's a tiger, they might want to throw that in the water and play with that in the water. And then people, maybe they don't realize that tigers like to play in the water. And then that stimulates a whole nother conversation. So it's a play behavior. It's a manipulative behavior. That's just one example. We can provide certain smells in the exhibit that are similar to what they might get in the wild, or it's just a smell that they don't normally have in the zoo on a day-to-day basis. It's a random new smell, and that will stimulate all of their olfactory senses, and that might produce a behavior like rolling or stinky face. That's what I call it when cats do that behavior. And then that's another way that keepers can engage with the public and explain what that looks like. So it's stimulating that animal so that they're not just static.
Right.
So
yeah, and it's because I understand the physiology. I understand animal behavior, and a lot of my research was examining stress. And I understand stress in animals and how it affects physiology and looking at behavior. So one of the things I know zoos have been doing, and aquariums to an extent, the last 20 years, is a lot of, not only enrichment, but also this idea of animal welfare, making sure these animals are well taken care of, right? I mean, that's been a big push that I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about, this enrichment, one of the things I've been noticing lately, or I've been reading, I guess, on my Facebook feed is, it just happens in the last couple of weeks. A lot of large cats. Oh, I forgot the name of one. Boris, I think he was a jaguar, just passed away at one of the zoos. He lived 20 years. Like, big cats don't live 20 years in the wild. So,
correct.
Can you kind of explain, from your perspective, you've been around these animals for, a long time, kind of their lives under human care versus, say, their life in the wild?
Yeah, that's a great example. It's a great way to bring up the topic of animal welfare, because it is it's a line that some people, it's hard to explain to some people. I do think, and this is also a great way to promote how important zoos are, because we do offer that opportunity for animals to live longer. So because they're in a facility instead of in the wild, they don't have any predators. So right there, we've eliminated a big thing for a lot of animals. So whether they're predator normally in the wild, if you're an antelope, your predator is a carnivore, or, whether you're a rhino and your predator is a human, to talk about the poaching crisis that we're having, we've eliminated for that particular animal that particular problem. So we've already, given them good welfare in that sense. But because, and it's kind of goes back to the husbandry training that I was talking about a minute ago, being able to work with these animals and not have to interrupt their life, so to speak, by having to do an immobilization or having to, handle them on any kind of a regular basis, because we have those great training programs, allows us to provide them with medical care that allows them to maybe live out their life a little bit longer. So
that's a great point. I mean, I've seen images from Africa, and it's like, we brought it up. I think it was in our lion episode, a few months ago. And I've seen pictures with skin hanging off of a lioness that, during a hunt gets injured, broken jaw, broken teeth. You look at them, there's just flies all over their faces and, parasites. The wild is a hard place on these animals. Mm-hmm. They're stressed on a day-to-day basis just of living, of struggling to live. So, yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point.
Yeah, I think, some of those, animals are tough. Mm-hmm. All species are tough. Don't get me wrong. They can live through a lot of things that we wouldn't think they can in the wild. But I'm happy that we're able to provide that level of care in our facilities, that we can, one, recognize through observation that there might be a problem and how bad it is, evaluate. Does it need treatment? Can we do it through training? Do we have to do an immobilization? Do we have to separate them from their herd mates? Do we have to, evaluate those sort of things? I'm thankful that we're able to do that, and it does help these animals live a longer, healthier life, and then that gives us a longer opportunity or a longer length of time for us to be able to interact with the public about them and talk to them, about their conservation or their particular plight in the wild, because we still have them as an example on exhibit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, it's like, It also pops into my head. I hear it all the time. Why not, first of all, put them in a sanctuary, which sanctuaries, there's very few that can afford any of this. These animals would go away if we did that. Two, just put them in the wild. And that's the goal of the zoos. They want these animals in the wild, and they want a healthy population in the wild. I always say, what wild? One of the things we've been educating people the past year is it's going away. It's, I think we're down to 23% of what it was before the Industrial Revolution.
Right. That's a really important point that you brought up, is if we don't preserve the habitat and help the communities in those areas, there's nothing to give back to the wild, or there's nothing to promote the regrowth of a species in the wild. So that's a really important point. We need to make sure that we're educating on that component. That goes back to, it's a full circle thing. The land use and the resources, and then, the communities and the population, all that space, that's all important to preserving these species.
It is really. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Can you just describe a day in the life of a zookeeper? I don't think we've really covered that on our podcast. I know, how hard you work on a day-to-day basis, but if you can just kind of explain to the listeners that haven't worked in zoos before, you get there like 6 a.m. and you're there till 5 p.m. You just kind of explain the day in the life of a zookeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full day for sure. I hope that I'm speaking for everyone in saying that, but it's a full day, whether you arrive at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., or 8 a.m. It's a full, generally, 8 to 12 hour day, depending on your facility, and how your, schedules are set up, of course. The first thing that you do is you prepare yourself. You come to work, you make sure you have your keys, you're wearing your uniform, you're wearing the right gear that you need to wear. You've got your form of communication, usually that's a standard walkie-talkie radio setup, so that that's part of a safety measure, so you can communicate with the rest of your keepers and the staff at the zoo. And then you go to your area. And at our facility, what we do is we would check all of your exhibits and the animals in your collection first, and make sure that everyone is where they're supposed to be, and that everyone, is looking at you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning, and happy to see you, because you're going to provide food and interaction with them on some level. And then you sort of systematically go about your day. And your day will consist of, obviously, taking care of the exhibit, which means cleaning up after the animals, setting up their enrichment for the day, making sure, doing a safety check of the perimeter and a safety check of the interior, to make sure that, there hasn't been any weather damage overnight, or, maybe the tiger exposed a corner of something in their exhibit by digging that might not be safe, and you have to have someone come in and look at it before you put the tigers back out for the day. So you basically take care of the exhibit, and then you take care of the animal. And the animal consists of, making sure, again, that you're using your observation skills. They look healthy for the day. They're eating their diet. They're acting normally. The other things that you have to plan into your day, obviously based on each facility, is what time do you have to have the animal shifted in and out, or side to side, or rotated for different collections, so that the public can enjoy them and does have the opportunity to learn about them and see them. Okay, so the timeline of your day is very important in terms of not only what you have to do and what's important to the animals, but what's also important to your guests that are coming to the zoo. So another thing that you have to think about is, is part of your day interacting with the public? A lot of facilities have their keepers scheduled at different times to be out, either in the exhibit, if it's a safe thing to do, or in front of the exhibit, if you will, interacting with the public, talking about conservation, talking about the individual animals at the zoo. That's something that you have to factor in. You also have to factor in your training sessions for the day, whether that happens as a group training session with a variety of animals, or multiple keepers for that matter, or if it's a one-on-one session, if the animal has to be shifted, if different groups have to be rotated. There's a lot that goes into that. Do you change out your enrichment multiple times a day? Again, that factors into your shifting strategy. And then prepping for the next day is also an important part. A lot of times diets have to be thought out for the next day or next successive days, or diets have to be prepped, or they have to be sorted in your commissary area, which is where a lot of facilities have their main food storage. There's also taking out the garbage. That's part of it. Making sure that you're keeping your area clean, and keeping the flow of the rest of the zoo. There's a lot of other parts of the zoo, like your grounds crew and your housekeeping staff and your education staff, and they all kind of fit together in this big puzzle. And everybody does kind of have this ripple effect of collaboration during the day. So that's kind of a snapshot, I would think.
No, it's busy. I mean, it is busy. Zookeepers work so hard. You work so hard on a day-to-day basis, and you do it because you love them. You love these animals, and you really believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's also things, just popping into my head, like, what if there's a giant hay delivery that day? That's like all hands on deck. That's like the entire keeper staff, or if you're available, obviously, as many people as possible go over and unload sometimes 3 semi-loads of hay, because that's something that has to be done, or unloading a semi full of, frozen food products, whether it be rodents or meat or, bones or fish. Those things also happen. They have to take place, So
no, yeah,
like
it is. It's a lot of work. So, here's a fun question. Do you have any like funny animal stories, or some of your favorite animal stories that you could share with the listeners?
I was trying to think of this. So one of my favorite just memories of working with the grubby zebra, going back to zebras. So I had 2 younger male grubby zebras, brothers, that lived together, and they got along famously. And one of the things that they loved to do, and it always made my day, if I could catch them in the act, right? So we had these giant black heavy-duty rubber food tubs. And we would, of course, put their feed in that at some point during the day, and then ship them outside. And they would immediately go out and flip them over, because that's just what they did. But the reason they did that is because they loved to play with those tubs. And they wouldn't just pick them up by the regular edge of the tub. They'd flip it over and pick it up by the bottom edge, which, that sturdy black rubber tub, that's real hard to do. And they would pick it up and just run around the exhibit, the 2 of them, like, playing tag with it. And we had to replace those tubs so often that it basically became an enrichment item for them. When it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be, a way to deliver their feed. So anyway, that is I love that memory. I love taking care of those boys, and that just made my day every time I could actually catch them in the act. I have one photograph of that,
gosh.
And it's not a great one, but I know what they're doing. So
yeah. Like I said,
so that's a good one.
I was going to say, like I said, if Angie was doing this interview, it would be 4 hours later talking about grubby zebras.
Awesome.
So, I got a couple more questions before I let you go.
Okay.
This is always the big one. And, debating people, around the world, and going, why save these animals? Why care about endangered species? Just let nature's take its course. I lived in New Zealand for 7 months, and there's a big fight down there with people that are, because down there in New Zealand, and I bring this up because there's been some articles coming up where people that are working in conservation are fearful for their lives, because these really extremists are targeting them for intimidation and death threats, things like that, because they're trying to kill off all these rodents, invasive species that are killing kiwis and native wildlife. So there's people out there that are like, oh, just let things go extinct. From your perspective, why should we convince people saving endangered species is worth the time, money, and effort?
Whew, that's a heavy question.
It is. It's a big one. So,
and I want to think that it's going to be fairly easy for me to answer. Let me see if I can articulate this. So, I think that all species are important, and I think that all species have a way of being managed so that we can all get along. So, and by managed, I mean, how can we educate ourselves, and how can we educate other people on why that's important? So, it goes back to me talking about habitat, I think, as well. They're very important. Animals, just like humans, we have an impact on our surroundings. So we have an impact on, the air and the water and the land and the plants and, the tiny species all the way up to the big species. We all impact each other. And I think that I think it's important for us to find that balance where humans and animals of all types can live on a landscape that can sustain all of us. That's a way to say it. And that's so hard. And I don't know that we've found the magical formula for that yet. But I do know that zookeepers play an important role in it, both at our facilities and in the wild. And not just zookeepers, animal care professionals, people that are passionate about all kinds of animals. And, whether that's the farmer or the small child that's taking care of, a classroom guinea pig, for example, or, whether it's your pets that you have at home or etc. I think that we all play an important role, and we're all working, hopefully, towards finding the answer to finding that balance.
It's amazing because, every interview we do, or, I know at least I do, and I encourage Angie to ask that question. I get so many different perspectives, and from the hardcore scientists that, down in New Zealand that are studying kiwi or blue whales to Dr. Barry Long, who's off in Indonesia, saving Sumatran rhinos, to here in the United States, where you have animals under human care that you are working hard to preserve. So it's amazing to get your perspective. Bethany, last question. How can we help? How can the listeners help? What can they do to not only help AAZk or support zookeepers and what they do? How do we support you in your efforts?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I kind of want to, let me just jump back just a little bit to what we were just talking about. I can't imagine the word extinct. That just doesn't exist in my kind of repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine if I didn't have my pets here at home. I can't imagine a world without rhinos. I can't imagine a world without elephants. I can't imagine a world without the vaquita porpoise. We certainly have species that are extinct, but I don't want that to happen under my watch. Mm-hmm. So I think what people can do is they can get more involved by going to their local facility, whether it's an aquarium or a zoo or a wildlife rehab center or, whatever it may be. I think go there, visit these places, interact with the animal care staff, take a minute to actually read the signage, take a minute to spend some time just sitting and looking at those surroundings and imagining what that would look like in the wild. Because you may not ever get the opportunity to travel to those places. And this is what we can provide to you, is that extension of learning. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing I would say. The next thing is, if you're more interested in the American Association of Zookeepers, I'll speak to people that are thinking about their up and coming profession, maybe students or people that currently volunteer at animal facilities. AAZk does have opportunities for membership for students and for affiliate members. And of course, if you are a professional animal care person at an aquarium or a zoo, we also have professional memberships. So you can join AAZk, and it's going to provide you those resources, that great opportunity for networking and communication and professional development. I encourage you to attend an AAZk national conference if possible, whatever level of membership you're at, whether it's professional, affiliate, or student. I would encourage you. You're also going to get our monthly publication if you're a member. Our website is a plethora of resources. So the website is aazk.org. We also didn't really talk about our Bowling for Rhinos program.
Oh, yeah, bring that up. Oh, yeah. That's an amazing one.
And also, I should mention social media. So you can follow the American Association of Zookeepers on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And that will also link you to a lot of our conservation partners as well. So the Bowling for Rhinos program is sort of our flagship conservation program. This is a big one to bring up, and I'm surprised that it didn't actually come up in our rhino conversation.
Yeah.
So we've been doing Bowling for Rhinos It was started by a small group of zookeepers just over 25 years ago, and it was a way for them to come together and create a fundraiser for these amazing species. And it has grown into a more than $7 million fundraiser for us. So we've been able to give back 100% of our proceeds over the years to an amazing total of over $7 million. And that helps. That helps with conservation for rhinos both in Africa and in Indonesia. So that's a really important thing to us. That's why the rhino is part of our logo. And when you're protecting rhinos, the thing to think about is you're also protecting a multitude of other species, as well as the environment, as well as the communities that those animals live in. So it's not just about rhinos, but rhinos happen to be the flagship species and happen to be, what we have been passionate for years and years. But I mean, you're helping cheetahs, you're helping elephants, you're helping giraffes. Over in Indonesia, you're helping primate species, you're helping, reptiles and amphibians and insects, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really important program, and people can get involved with Bowling for Rhinos. They can find out more on the AAZk website, but they could also find out if there's a local chapter of AAZk in their area, and they can attend their annual Bowling for Rhinos event. It's a fun family night out. There's just lots to learn about rhinos when you go. There's always some sort of conservation education message because we can't help ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's a really fun time. And if you're looking for something, this is, it's great to think about starting off the new year as well. What can you do for conservation? This is a local thing that you can do that makes a global impact.
It does. And I've taken my boys every year. I know Angie does. It's a fun event. Always have fun at that. And I'll make sure to put all these links on our website so folks can go there and learn more about your organization and, Bowling for Rhinos and things like that. Bethany Bingham from the Hogle Zoo there in Salt Lake City, Utah. I hope you're staying warm this time of year.
Yeah, we're actually having a little bit of a snowstorm right now, so that's par for the course.
Yeah. And here I am in sunny Southern California, it's 70 degrees out.
Yeah.
I know. But, the snow's pretty.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you for what you do. It's an inspiration to me. I know it's an inspiration to Angie and a lot of our listeners that, you are a big part of conservation. It's not just the folks in the field. And you've been to Indonesia, thanks for sharing that. So, you do a critical piece. Everybody in this big wheel of conservation does a big, big part of it. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Absolutely. And next time I'll have Angie interview you, and it'll be like a 5-hour interview.
I would actually love that. I look forward to it.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. You too.